when you practice yoga, you get better at everything. So it's not just that the practice of yoga makes your yoga practice better. It helps with you're breathing better, right? So maybe you're
Right.
overall healthier and maybe you're happier because your nervous system is more balanced because you're breathing better. And maybe you are able to do poses that you weren't able to ever do before. And so that awakens the idea of things are still possible.
My guest today is Sara Massa. She is a yoga instructor with the LVHN Jefferson Network now, and she does some amazing things that really impact other people. A lot of people are carrying around a huge amount of stress, right? Just because of things that are happening in the world, things that affect them and their families are happening every day. It's not necessarily political, it's just a level of stuff that's going on that really stresses people out, and then there's also noise, right? It's loud around here. It's almost impossible to find a place where it's quiet, but a lot of people I know are carrying around this feeling that things are so awful, it's too big to fix. I'm going to retreat. And well, maybe the solution to that is a little bit more silence. It's not something that's shouted at you. It's something peaceful and meditative, right? That's where Sara comes in. Sara seems to have figured that out about 20 years ago, and it's been reverberating ever since. And I know because I take her classes, and people in that class start a class with a certain energy and leave there with a completely different energy every single time. It's not a joke. It's expertly done, and we're gonna ask Sara about what she does and who she is and how that happens every single time. So, meet Sara Massa. Sara, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Dave, thank you for having me here today with you guys. Um, so right up front, just to be clear, Dave had all these kind words, and I can't take credit for the benefits of yoga. This is an ancient lineage. It's been here long before me. It will outlast me, and that's all good stuff. But I am happy to share the little bits that I've learned over the years. And I'm very grateful to have the opportunities to continue to learn and continue to teach, because every day as I teach, I'm learning more from the students from each class. There's no two classes that end up totally identical. And a lot of that is just because of what people bring into the room, whether it's a physical issue, something someone mentioned, something I see in the room, something someone is saying about their mental or emotional state. There's a lot we can look at and address on the mat when we're together in this space. So about me, I came to yoga about, like Dave said, 20 years-ish ago. I was at that time a high school English teacher.
Oh,
And
wow.
one of the continuing ed options we had was to try a yoga class, to take a couple in a series. So usually they were like meetings for curriculum or classroom management. And then there was this
Right.
option that sounded nice because it was different. It sounded like whatever it was might be more interesting than sitting through another talk. And I danced my whole life growing up. So the appeal, there was something appealing about moving as well. So I took
Right.
one class and was hooked after that. I think it might have been at the end of the class that I asked the teacher, I think I want to, I think I had the audacity to say, I think I want to teach this. I don't even think I said I want to take lessons. I think I started with, I think I want to teach this. So where do I go from here? And then it just grew. And I was working at different yoga studios, and I taught at the YMCA for about a year or two, maybe 15 years ago. And in 2017, LVH and Fitness was looking for a prenatal yoga instructor. They wanted to start prenatal classes. And I was teaching at a local yoga studio, teaching prenatal classes. So they found me on the website. And then I started work for them. And then I started just teaching prenatal classes for them. And I still do teach one a week, but that's the
Oh,
minority.
wow.
Now, the majority of classes are not geared toward
What do you
prenatal
do in
students.
those classes?
In prenatal,
Yeah,
is that
yeah,
we get comfortable. We make space to be in the, every week people come with literally new bodies week to week. They're changing.
right,
So, um, one of the main goals is just finding comfort week to week. So we use a lot of props, as you can imagine. In all my yoga classes, I like to use props, but prenatal probably uses the most. We'll use two bolsters, chairs,
right.
blocks, whatever we can find.
I was thinking that you were doing when you said prenatal, I went directly to the baby.
Right, it's on the inside first, and, you're not wrong, though. The way the network has set it up, they call them bump classes, and I don't really think about that frequently. It stands for babies, mothers, pregnancy. I don't know what the U is. They made up the name, but it includes prenatal and postnatal. Most of the students are prenatal, but it is
Right.
always fun when someone returns 6 weeks after they have baby and brings the baby to the class. And it's like inspiration for everyone else. And then those little, as you said, little balls of clay are on the mat and they'll be lying there just like looking up at the mom. And so we'll do some poses geared to postnatal, kind of getting everything back in alignment after baby's there. And the babies are amazing. I mean, we are floored. You'll see a little baby looking at the mom and the mom's moving her arm and then the baby will look up and do the same arm gesture.
Oh,
So, like I said, you're always learning. Every class I teach, I learn every class. I think we're all just learning all the time, right? If we ourselves too.
yeah, I think your classes are great. I don't know if you caught me smiling today,
I always
but
catch you smiling, Dave.
we you were doing that thing where your arms float over your head, right? We're
Mhm.
standing, and I've never had this before. My shoulders were so loose that my arms literally floated up, and it
Yes.
was so comfortable, and I started giggling to myself, which I do a lot because, as I've said before, I've come into your class feeling like I was a block of wood. In the first few classes, I didn't feel like I could do anything. Getting up and down off the mat was probably hilarious to watch because I couldn't do it. The back of my legs were so tight, everything was tight about me. And every week that I can do something more, I'm amazed. And you bring things to this that, well, I wrote down 2 words, proprioception and breath work. And it seems like you focus on this stuff, right? So I find that there are parts of my body that I didn't know could move, and I move them ever so slightly, and then I feel a pop and a flow, and something has opened up, and now I've been freed, and it happens almost every time. It's just the most amazing thing. It's even as simple, and other folks in the class have told me this. We've got a couple older gentlemen in the group um, who have had the same experience where maybe you're just doing a forward fold and for the first time you can reach the mat or your back loosens up and, or you'll say, just tilt your pelvis like that. Now, I didn't know my pelvis moved that way. And the, the flow that happens after that is amazing. And it just makes me laugh because I came into this class really tight. And now I can do things that I haven't been able to do in my entire life. I was a stiff kid in 3rd grade. Literally 3rd grade, I couldn't touch my toes, and I wasn't a fat kid.
Yeah.
I was just tight.
Yeah. Look
And I
at you
used to
now.
part of it is I used to walk on my toes, and then
Okay.
in my 3rd grade class, I had an operation that lengthened something. They called it the Achilles tendon, but I don't think
Mhm.
it was. There was nothing like physical therapy at that point.
Wow.
Nobody had physical therapy when in, what, 1968.
Wow.
It just didn't exist. And you go about being a kid and you run around and you play and everything's kind of tight and it is what it is, right?
Mhm.
And I notice that I hold tightness in my glutes and my lower back and then my shoulders, which
Mhm.
is how you turn into a block of wood, right? Both sides are tight. But, this is part of the reason I wanted to talk to you is because it has literally changed my life. I am so much freer and I'm doing things that I wouldn't necessarily have done. I've never been afraid to do anything, but
Mhm.
it's so much easier now.
Yes. Well, that reminds me, I've heard it said before, and I think I've shared this with you as well, that when you practice yoga, you get better at everything. So it's not just that the practice of yoga makes your yoga practice better. It helps with every single you're breathing better, right? So maybe you're
Right,
overall healthier and maybe you're happier because your nervous system is more balanced because you're breathing better. And maybe you are able to do poses that you weren't able to ever do before. And so that awakens the idea of things are still possible. Like I haven't reached my
right,
peak. And a lot of times as we age, it feels like there's less and more opportunity to do new things or to get better at anything. And I think some of those are the gifts that we can really benefit from when we practice yoga. It's just going to help just being stable, being balanced, having that proprioception, knowing where you are in space. That's going to
right.
help walking as you age. That's going to help just everything. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and, I know a couple people who have been lifelong yoga folks. There's a guy who needed a new heart valve. I didn't know he was doing yoga. He had this problem, and he got it fixed, and
Mhm.
within literally just, like, couple weeks, he was back at it and back to work, and it usually takes a lot longer for people, and I said, "So, Vince, what is it that allowed you to recover so quickly?" He said, "The doctor said it was yoga." He's been
That's
doing yoga
awesome.
for 30 years. And there are also people in your class who have put off getting hip replacements because they don't feel
Mhm.
the need because they're doing yoga, and their doctors told them it's the yoga that's helping them.
Incredible.
So, when did you first notice that yoga really changed things for people? Was it in one of your first classes, or is this something that just occurred to you as you were going? Or maybe it just never occurred to you?
um, so I think personally for me, what happened is what I see happen to so many people where I started practicing because um it was like on the physical plane that sounded good. I needed to stretch more. I thought that, the first class I thought, oh,
Right,
stretching will be fine. That's good. And then I really liked that. I liked the stretching and I liked the strengthening. And I heard of other stuff beyond that, but for me, for a little bit, it was just, and I was young in my 20s and was just like, that's great and that's enough. That's what I need. And I don't know when it happened, but I know in hindsight, looking back, that while the stretching and strengthening is still so much of it, it's the benefits that far outweigh it, like I said, are maybe peace of mind or finding that quiet, the ability to tune out what's going on around and kind of tune into the center. And I hear that story from so many students too, where they come and that one of the first things people say is like, I need to stretch more or I'm not flexible, but this maybe I can stretch here and get flexible. And then like the same person a couple weeks later, a couple months later will be talking about a benefit totally unrelated. And so I think for a lot of
right.
people it's that same progress. You come for the physical and then you end up really noticing maybe the other components. And students are very good, like you said. You had mentioned what someone in the class said to you. Students come up to me all the time, and I love, love, love when they share how it's changing things for them. And just today in class, one of the students was saying how the thing she likes the most that she got from yoga is her alignment. Not just in the
Mhm.
classroom, but she said in the grocery store, she was noticing other people were leaning on their carriages and she was able to walk with her shoulders over her hips. And that felt great being tall because she was aware of something she'd never thought of before.
Yeah, and that I've noticed that. Um, the other Dave in the class has noticed that. It's pretty
Mhm.
funny. We talk about how we stand up straighter, and I actually feel taller. There was
Yes,
one point when I was looking in the mirror, I'm like, Are you taller than you used to be?" And
you might
probably
be.
because
I've heard that
I'm
actually. Some
standing
of the
up.
students, yep, they say when they're measured at the doctor has said you're supposed to shrink as you age, and you didn't. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean they never will, but we can slow it a little bit. Maybe anything that we have control over with the awareness, we can
I think when
bring
you
space
focus
to.
on your body and you are, the whole proprioception thing, knowing where you are in space
Mhm,
makes a huge difference. I mean, I
mhm.
started off years ago, I was going to a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, and a massage therapist, usually on Tuesdays for about 3 hours. I'd have an adjustment, I'd have acupuncture, and then I'd get an hour long massage. It was wonderful. I was still tight,
Mhm,
still a block of wood, but I felt better about it.
mhm.
And actually, the work I did with the chiropractor, I grew a quarter inch.
Wow.
He did some work on I fell out of an airplane once, I think I told you,
You sure
and
did.
really kind of, screwed up my leg, and he was working on I had a bunch of people working on getting rid of scar tissue and realigning things, and he did a lot of work on my feet, and that one of my legs was shorter than the other because it's got a lot of hardware in it,
Okay.
right? And the
Mhm.
work he did actually lengthened that leg.
Wow.
So, all of this stuff that a lot of people think is not real, you know, it's very real. It's
Yeah.
like state of mind, like you said, yoga puts people in a different state of mind, and in that state, in a more positive state of mind, better things happen to you in the world. So tell me what happens in your class. What does a typical class look like?
So we start every class by taking a moment when we find our breath, find ourselves in the day. So we'll always start seated, we'll close the eyes, and that's the cue, the very clear cue that we're starting something and we're stepping back from the day. We're disengaging from all of the external distractions, withdrawing the senses, and moving the focus inward. And then we start to find the breath. And that's nothing more complicated than simply noticing where you are in the breath, noticing if you're inhaling or exhaling, finding the breath in your body. And honestly, if that was all we did, that would probably have enough merit on its own. And sometimes, if in a day you have 1 minute of free time and you can do that, there's benefit just finding your breath, finding yourself, finding a little bit of space and quiet. But after that, we will try to keep the connection to our breath as we move through poses, yoga poses. And that's where a lot of the stretching and strengthening comes in. And then we always end class with a little restorative work and shavasana, which is that final resting pose, and leave hopefully in a little more balanced state, a little more present, a little more centered. That's kind of the plan.
Yeah,
So
and I think it kind of works. The plan works.
good.
I
Good.
know the
Well, it's
plan works.
interesting, Dave, you were talking about like kind of that ripple effect. And when, we had mentioned the alignment, right? How when you're standing taller, right? So that's a
Right.
physical benefit of the practice. And it's so interesting how everything's so interconnected because when someone is standing tall, physically that's great. You're aligned properly. You can breathe better. But also it feels and it emotes a message of confidence, right? If
Right.
someone, the body language, if you see someone who's sitting tall versus someone who is sort of collapsed in and down, or maybe looking down, that body language is huge. So, for yourself, the message you're telling yourself in a day when you're sitting tall and breathing well is one of positivity and can do spirit. And that's what you're putting out in the world as well. So, someone
Right.
subconsciously, without thinking about it, maybe sees you, and if it's a collapsed sort of state, maybe in a way that spreads that kind of defeatist message. Whereas if everyone's really well aligned and uplifted and confident, maybe that can just spread and ripple.
Perfect. Yeah. Um, you're answering my questions before I get to them. So what does success look like to you? And I'm not talking about numbers of people in the classes because that's going to vary.
Right. Now, success, balance. I think just finding a balance really is. success in all facets. Usually when whether you're talking on like a very personal level or a very public level, usually when there's like extremes, things get a little bit off kilter. So
Right.
if I'm in a balanced state, if my work and home life are balanced, um, I think that's where we find success and any environment that fosters well-being, positive, and joy.
Yeah. So being that you spend what, 3, 4 hours a day sometimes doing yoga, do you have to go find bad things to balance that out?
No. No, I definitely don't need to. Unfortunately, if you ever turn on the TV, which I actually don't frequently, I stay away from that, but stuff is out there. No, I didn't mean the balance between good and bad. I just meant the balance between restive, active, passive, active, all
Okay,
of
that's
that.
better.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask you a few questions from some people in class.
Yeah.
Okay, this one comes from the aforementioned Dave Strassman.
Okay.
He said, "How do you balance your spiritual practice with the spiritual practice of yoga?"
Oh, interesting. Okay. I think they actually work well together. And I have heard some people say things like, oh, I mean, this doesn't frequently come to me, but I have heard people say, like, you know, is yoga against your religion? I happen to be Catholic, but is yoga against your religion or yoga is the work of the devil or all these different things?
Oh,
Usually they're people that don't really know anything about yoga, right? If you've
right,
been in a class, you know that that just isn't really true. But it's interesting because I think that my yoga practice and my religion, they have the same kind of tenets and goals, right? Peace and
yeah,
balance and stability and harmony. And without getting too into it, because there's just so much in yoga philosophy, but um, there are there's like 8 limbs of yoga. And the second limb or branch, the second sort of study of the practice is niyama, which it's called niyama, and it's like a personal discipline. So there's different things that you could look for, like purity and cleanliness, and self-discipline and self-study. And the ultimate one of these is called samadhi, which means surrender
yeah,
to God, and that's just supposed to
right,
be like this kind of state of wellness. So I just think it all kind of works together. There's many paths, one tree, right? And you can just
right.
find your way however. And I feel like the more you look, the more you see correlations instead of
Right.
deviations between the
Well,
paths. It's
let me
cool.
get you another question here. Okay, so another one was this one's from Josh. How do you handle people with different levels of experience and capability or folks with injuries or disabilities?
Um, so I went through a very rigorous and I think well-fashioned teacher training originally. And I don't think the exact one I went through is even in existence anymore, but my teachers were very good. That was a priority that we would be able, the students going through the teacher training would be able to adapt to different levels because that's I mean, that's just about every class. You have
Right,
people with
that's what
different
shows up,
capabilities.
right,
Yeah. So one of the huge benefits of using props in a class is that you have these ready-made tools. It would be much harder to do a class for um, anyone, a class for varied abilities, which, like I said, is every class, if we didn't, because props make movement possible where it wouldn't be otherwise, and even more than possible, comfortable, accessible,
mhm,
safe. Um, and sometimes in the room, I mean, it really varies person to person, and you just get a read of people's comfort level. Sometimes you have to cue a pose. Maybe I wouldn't have cued it for everyone this way, but if I can tell the person who needs support in a pose won't take if I were to say use a block if you want to, or if it feels good, or if you have trouble opening a hip, use a block. Depending on
right,
who's in the class, there are some people who won't be that person because it will they will feel it as a sign of, I can't do this, so I need more support.
Right.
So
Right.
sometimes, depending on what's going on, I will just cue the pose as if everyone needs the prop, because usually
Right.
it's only going to be beneficial for people, even if it's not necessary. It's just a different way of practicing and could bring benefit. So sometimes it's just cueing, sometimes it is doing the prop in a way that the person with the most physical limitations in that moment can safely do it.
But, there's something you
Mm.
probably don't realize is when you say to somebody who maybe has a knee problem or is doing something and you say, you know, "Move your ankle this way," or "Widen your stance a little bit," or just change that. There are other people, this guy, who will do it because they weren't doing it quite at the level that you were suggesting,
Yeah,
and it makes a difference for everybody.
right.
It
Right. So
does.
frequently that is the case, Dave, where maybe I'll see it in one person and then everyone sort of thinks, oh, maybe I'll try that too. And it is, yes, exactly. It's like across the board, just a benefit for people.
Right. So I don't remember who asked this, but it said, "If you can do one pose or flow for the rest of your life, what would it be?"
Ooh, interesting.
And take it more as if you had to only do one pose or flow.
Okay. If there was one pose, that is a great question. So I'm not gonna say Shavasana, although part of me thinks that sounds pretty great. That's the one for, if you don't know, it's when you're lying flat on your back at the end of class. Just the English is corpse pose. Usually we say the Sanskrit word just because it's a little bit prettier. Um, but I will say one of my favorite yoga poses, um, and it probably is apparent in class. One of my favorite poses is tree pose. I do love, love, love tree because I think it kind of does have the balance of just everything. It's active, but it's also, to do it successfully, you need to be in a quiet
Yeah.
headspace, right? And it's exhilarating, but it's also very balanced and stable. So that definitely is one of my very favorite poses and one that I do plan to practice just forever.
I think, what came to mind for me was the one that Dave had described in the gym, which was starfish stuck to the wall,
Correct. That is
which
half moon or Ardha Chandrasana for those who may not know.
I'm gonna move you into the next step of this, um, which is one thing that people can do. Like, if there's one thing somebody could do who's never done yoga before, what would that be?
Mhm,
As part of the public square project that I'm doing, that this is part of, is to get people to do one small thing. I
mhm,
actually stole it. I used to work a lot in sustainability and energy and tried to get people to do just one small thing to save energy.
mhm,
And it applies here as well,
mhm,
in anything that we're doing. If you can do one small thing, it might actually change your entire life. So not to
mhm.
put pressure on you, but
Sure. And so maybe this is a very good time to say that, full disclosure, for my scope of practice, I'm here as a friend and yoga instructor, not therapist, not counselor, definitely not any one specific therapist or counselor, and not even as, honestly, not representing um, the voice of LVHM fitness either. So this is
oh, of
just
course
me,
not.
your friend,
Right.
your instructor. But with all that being said and done, so I actually kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but something as basic really as maybe sitting in a quiet space, getting away from the phone, turning off the TVs, really unplugging everything. And then, just how I mentioned, starting a yoga class. So if you close your eyes, feel where you're seated. So really kind of take in your environment. And it doesn't matter how you're seated, but you just feel that. And then with the eyes closed, find the breath. So you're feeling the full inhales and the full exhales, allowing them to be full and complete. One of the things this does is it does help. It's probably the easiest tool we have on hand to help balance the nervous system. So, that state of well being where we're kind of matching the sympathetic and the parasympathetic side. So, we're able to be responsive and productive and yet very grounded and calm and quiet at the same time. And we're in that place where we can mindfully make choices about our actions and mindfully react and choose how we're going through life.
Mm,
So, ultimately, the nervous system is the lens through which we perceive the world around us. And so, if we are in a better state, it's just like your message of positivity, Dave. It just kind of makes everything we encounter more manageable or better or more
yeah.
positive, and then that ripples, that spreads.
Okay, so this is lightning round, 1 or 2 sentences. What is the best thing about where you live right now? Looks pretty beautiful
Um,
from the picture.
Thank you. The very best
Mhm.
thing is that it's a family house that my grandfather built. So it's
Oh,
the
wow.
house in which my mom was raised and grew up. So it's literal roots here. Like the trees that are in the backyard are trees when I
Yeah,
came down to visit on holidays, the same trees rooted in the ground. So the family history and the roots.
that's terrific.
Mhm.
One yoga pose that best describes your community.
Um I would say child's pose because in my immediate community, I have a lot of kids, right? So there
Oh,
was like a decade there where I was just surrounded by babies and kids. And yeah, so my community is my family. And yeah, let's go with child's pose.
that's sweet. Very good. Let's see. One neighbor or person you think deserves more credit.
Um, Always, I think, so wherever you are, always the janitors, the people who are
Yeah,
literally cleaning up everything around us every day. I think about that sometimes when we're at the fitness center, right?
yeah,
And they seem overlooked and underthanked. And their
yeah,
job is so vital
yeah,
and they make everything possible, and it's very easy because they're good at being invisible, right? They come in when
yeah.
no one's around and they do their job, and
Right.
it's almost like the better they do it, the less they're noticed, because they're only
That's
mentioned when if
true, yeah.
someone's complaining about something, right? um so yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I wanna give LVHN props for that. They have a great staff over there at every level. They
Yeah,
they do an amazing job,
that's awesome.
and that's something everybody can do is just recognize people in the places that you go every day, even if it's just a person at the checkout, in your supermarket. Thank them for coming to work that day.
Yeah.
What do you do when you need to decompress?
um I find quiet, I read, I do yoga, I pray, um and I am with my family. I would say those are the main things. If I feel a need to step back from the world, that would be my go-to list.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Mm.
So, where can people find you?
Currently, I am teaching at 3 of LVHN Fitness Center locations, the one on Cedar Crest, the one right near Muhlenberg Hospital, and one city center on Hamilton Street, I believe it is, in Allentown. So those are where my public classes are. I teach at a few independent living facilities as well, but the classes, at least at this stage, are only for the residents at those facilities.
Well, that's really great. Thank you so much. Um, I I couldn't thank you more. This was really fun,
This was
and I
fun. Thanks, Dave.
I hope that people can take something away from this and make their lives better just by doing one simple thing, or come join the gym and start taking your classes because you're all over the place, and you have a way of teaching that is very instructional. Your cues are terrific, and people have said that your classes tend to be almost meditative in that they can have a clear mind for the full 45 minutes to an hour just by following your instruction, and they don't get that anywhere else. So, I wanna put that out there.
Thank you.
If you can do anything for an hour without having to be inside your head, that's a huge benefit. If, as a listener or someone who watches this podcast, if this moved you, share it with somebody um, who needs it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and tell your friends about the Public Square Project. We're trying to just bring some more positivity in the world and give people some simple instructions about ways to do that. Thanks again, Sarah.
Thanks, Dave.